I grew up on down-home food. Now, I'm sure you could describe to me in some form, some context, the food of your growing up. I really didn't call it down-home food when I was eating it. I came to terms with that term later on because I would see restaurants that would say down-home cooking. And they served a lot of what I ate growing up. So I came to appreciate it as down-home food. Now, you may or may not have an idea of what I mean by that, but let me put it in context for you. Let me just for a moment describe the dinner menu in my home. Except it wasn't dinner, it was supper. The first thing you would notice if you walked up and you looked at the table was you would notice the meat. Meat was very important at supper. Now, we called anything that had moved of its own accord meat. So we considered fish meat. I later came to divide it out, but there was meat. So we would often have beef or pork, or as my grandmother called it, pig meat. Or we would have chicken, and most often that would be fried unless it was in dumplings. And we'd have fish. Those were the main meats that we would eat. But now, some of us hunted, some of us had family and friends who hunted, so we ate some other things too that we might consider meat, but I'm just not going to go there today. Some of them might disappoint you. Next would be potatoes. Now, they could be white potatoes or sweet potatoes, but there would always be potatoes on the table. And more often than not, they would be mashed white potatoes. Then there would be vegetables. There would usually be probably a couple of those, but you could bet that if one of them was green, it had meat in it and was somehow seasoned with the meat. Meat was important. You get that? And then the last thing that would be there would be bread. We had to have bread. Now, they could be store-bought rolls or homemade bread. Or homemade cornbread. We never bought our cornbread. I didn't know of any place where you could buy it. You had to make that. But that's what I ate. That's the food that I call down-home food. I could tell you just about any day of the week what we were going to have for supper. Because I knew that menu. And I knew that it would be some of these kinds of things. My menu broadened a little bit with school lunches. That's the first place that I ever ate pizza, if you want to call it that. They told us it was pizza. But I wouldn't call it that now. And rice. I ate rice at school lunches. We didn't eat that at home, so that wasn't down-home food for me. That food nourished me in many ways, and the people with whom I would eat when I would go to visit with a friend or whatever, they ate the same kind of food that we did. They had a very similar palate. They ate this same stuff. And when we would gather together for church lunches or dinners, that's what would be on the table there. Oh, somebody would bring something strange here or there, but that's what would be there. Food is directly connected in many ways with our faith. With our faith. In the book of Acts, in this reading that we have today, Peter talks about this sheet that descends from above. And on this sheet is various kinds of animals. Peter knew that what he ate was directly related to his faith. There were things he could and couldn't eat, and on this sheet were things he couldn't eat, not by law. So it descended, and the voice from heaven said, Peter, go kill something and eat it. And he said, I can't. There's stuff on there I can't eat. The voice said, I said it's okay. And says that 3 times before Peter finally gets it. For you see, what Peter finally gets is that it's only remotely about the food. This is about something much more important. It's about something that's going to change people's lives. I once asked my mother when I was a child why we don't have rice for supper. She said, I don't like rice. I said, when did you have it and not like it? And she said, oh, I've never eaten it. I don't like rice. It was her way of saying, this is how things are. This is the menu that has to be. And this is how I'm going to keep it. This is what it means for me to hold this together and do what I need to do. It's the same sort of thing that Peter was saying. You see, what happened in this story of Peter is this very simple thing that this vision said to him, and he was saying to others, this is not how the church has to be. You see, it started out as a sect of Judaism. It was a small group of the Jews that got together. But what happened in this vision was God said to Peter, this isn't how it needs to stay. This isn't about just you guys, it's about everybody. Open the doors to the Gentiles and go be with them. I know that's not the church of your childhood. I know that's not the food you ate growing up. But it's time to broaden your horizons. I ate pizza for the first time really as a teenager. My mother bought one of those really cheap frozen ones. It really wasn't pizza still. I never ate Chinese food until I was in my 20s because we didn't serve rice at home. But that kind of opened the door for me, and I became a person who began to look outside of my background and my growing up to look for those foods that I liked. And I still do it today. I'm happy to try any new food. Well, most of them. I still look out and I don't want to go back to that. What Peter said to those folks at that time about their dietary habits and also about who was welcome and how the church would look is true for us too. For those of us who grew up in church, I want you to consider this question. 30 years ago, would you imagine that the church that we know and love would have been dealing with the issues we've been dealing with for the past 15 years? 20 years? It wasn't on our menu then, was it? "30 years ago," and I don't answer this because I already know your answer. 30 years ago, would you have imagined, any of you, that you would be in a church like this? Looking at this? I would not have ever imagined it. Yet I find in this place the love of God. A place where my spirit is stirred and challenged and my faith is deepened. Oftentimes when we talk about church and about where we go as a church, we often look back at those churches of years ago. We look at them with nostalgia and we think, how can we create that now? When in reality, if we do that, we create a dead church. We create something that's gone. And quite frankly, if we envision a church that is like what we have right now, we envision a dying church. You and I are called to envision the church that is coming. Now, there are a lot of people out in the world who will tell you that they have got the perfect formula for helping you to establish what that church is going to look like. I got to tell you, there's some good ideas. But I got to tell you, truly envisioning what the church will be like is almost an impossibility. It is extremely difficult. But I know how to do it. And I'm going to tell you exactly how to do it. It's not in the steps of the formula. It's not in the next bestseller on church development. It's in the Gospel of John, the one we read today, where Jesus looks at his disciples at the Last Supper, and he looks at them and he says, "As I have loved you, love one another." As I have loved you, love one another. Now, both of those are important sentences. It's easy just to hear that second one and go from there. Because it's easy to love people the way you and I want to love them. Because we can really love this person a whole lot and we can love this person over here a lot less. But we love them. That first sentence gets us. As I have loved you. So what I say to you is that the way we envision the church of the future, which means the church for next week, or next month, or next year, is we envision a way in which you and I find a new and refreshing way to love others as Jesus loves us. Not as Jesus loved us, as Jesus loves us. And oh, how He loves us. I imagine that supper table many years ago, and I do so with nostalgia. There were things that happened there. There were tastes that were there. I did learn to love Worcestershire sauce, but that was about something else. And when I think about it, I realize that what tasted good then doesn't taste so good now. Some of it does, some of it doesn't. My approach to food and my approach to life and my approach to God have all expanded. What a broad menu you and I have when we gather at the table of the Lord. What a broad menu you and I have that helps to feed our faith. A menu that we can offer to others and incorporate theirs with us too. And know that as we do so, that it is by this that people will know that we are disciples of Christ. Amen.